Hi, I'm Dr. Joe Servant, and welcome to Cafecito with Dr. Joe, where I pour you a cup of coffee and we talk about what's going on behind the scenes on my radio show and podcast, What's Health Got to Do with It? It's distributed by PRX, produced by WJCT Studios, available throughout Florida, now coast to coast, and on any place you get your podcast under the NPR umbrella. On our January 24th episode, we had the honor and privilege of interviewing Dr. Seth Barkley. Dr. Seth Barkley is the former director of Gavi, that is a vaccine alliance. This is someone who basically gave counsel on all about vaccines to the US government, to the British government, and so it was a true a joy to have him join us on our show to talk about vaccines. In his new book, which is titled Fair Doses, an insider story of the pandemic and global fight for vaccine equity, he argues that in general, vaccines overall are not a solved problem. Access to vaccines, particularly if you don't live in a place like the United States where you can get them if you wish, can sometimes determine what's going to happen to you. In other words, it stabilizes society. There's a myth that, vaccines solve everything. And don't get me wrong, I very much want people to get vaccines. But in this situation, he points out in places who don't have that access, those diseases and those conditions really can send society run amok. Any of us who know this, waiting for the COVID vaccine circa 2021 and hoping for it, know what can happen when there's a terrible condition and you don't have a way to prevent it. That is still the story in many a country. I loved our interview with him because he really helped to frame the history of what's going on with regards to vaccine equity and access, and more importantly, to help us better understand our current vaccine issues here in the US, where we've seen some of those numbers drop down with changes in political influence, social media, misinformation. I think you're gonna find both the book and the interview quite compelling, and it was a really interesting interview. I learned a lot from talking to him. So until then, just remember those three things I always tell everyone: stay healthy, keep in touch, y salud.